Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, and there's now a carbine weapon for the support class, the Pieper model 1893. And I'm either going to say Pieper or Pieper for the whole video. I'm sorry if it's wrong. I'm doing my best. I don't know the actual pronunciation, unfortunately. But this weapon is actually a tanker or pilot primary weapon that has now been made available for the support class. And I'm willing to bet that barely any of you have any significant playtime with it. It's a completely fresh feel for the support class, where we're used to using LMGs. But should you be excited about this new option? Well, let's get into this and you can make your own decision. I'm going to be using the in-depth stats that are available from sympathic.com for this video. They're more accurate than the ones you see in-game, and then I'll throw my personal experiences and opinions on top of that to help to flesh things out a bit so you can make your decision. I intend to do the same for all of the new weapons and variants that were added in the June 27th patch, so if you want to see those, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on with the bell button. And today I've also left in some M1911 silencer footage, as it's also a new addition, this time for the sidearm slot, and I just think it's really cool in all honesty, so enjoy that as well. But anyway, the Pieper. Let's get into the stats. And it's a bit of a rough ride, to be honest with you. It has a max damage stat of 40 and a minimum damage stat of 21. If we compare that to a medic rifle, which is actually this weapon's most relevant competitor, let's take the Farquhar Hill for example. The Farquhar hits for 2 more max damage and 9 more minimum damage, all whilst firing 33 rounds per minute faster. This is because the Pieper has a rate of fire of 224 rounds per minute, which is pretty slow. It's actually the same as the Self-Sladder M1916, but the Self-Sladder has a minimum damage stat 14 points higher than that of the Pieper. Throw on top of this less than fantastic start that it can only utilize 9 rounds per reload. It then also has a fairly slow reload time and a really mediocre muzzle velocity of 420 meters per second. But what about recoil? Well, its vertical recoil is a little strong, but this is balanced out by excellent horizontal recoil. So if you let the sights drop back down when you need to, you can keep a nice center line. And at range it will be necessary to do this, as it doesn't have a great spread increase per shot stat. It's actually double that of the 2 medic rifles I mentioned earlier, and nearly 3 times more than that of the M1918 experimental of the scout class. However, it is a pretty strong weapon if you like to ADS whilst moving. Some weapons have crazy spread when you try to do this, but the Pieper isn't one of them. So strafing and shooting is a viable tactic here, and it then has pretty average ADS spread when standing still to go with this. Then onto hipfire spread, and it's actually looking really encouraging here stat wise, although I didn't honestly notice it being fantastic from the hip while playing, maybe due to the pretty slow rate of fire, meaning that even if it was accurate, its time to kill was too slow for it to matter in many close range situations. So what does this all mean? Well, basically it's not much of a damage dealer. In fact, it has a pretty slow time to kill in most situations when compared with other options. This is really driven home when you consider damage drop-off stats. The Pieper requires 3 shots to kill out to 22 meters, but it has that slow rate of fire. It then requires 4 shots from 23 to 34 meters. A lot of medic rifles are still hitting for 3 bullet kills here, although it does embarrass the aforementioned M1903 experimental of the scout class, which requires 7 shots to kill at 34 meters. But the Pieper then requires 5 shots from 35 meters, where again some medic rifles still only require 3 and also fire at the same or faster rate of fire, so it gets slayed by close quarters weapons in confined areas. At mid-range it's decent but not great when compared to many alternative medic rifles and indeed bipoded LMGs, and it's pretty weak at long range compared to, well, a lot of things in all honesty. So whereas jack of all trades weapons are essentially average at most things, this is just mediocre at most things. It's not that difficult to use in terms of handling recoil and spread, but to balance this, it also doesn't really give you much of an advantage in any particular situation. I guess this is somewhat to be expected of a weapon that is usually a tanker or pilot weapon. You aren't supposed to pick those things based on the primary weapon you get, so it can't be too strong, but this doesn't stop it from being a bit of a letdown when you're using it as your primary for the support class, of course. Some may say, well, it's sort of like a fast-firing Russian trench, and whilst I kinda get that vibe from it, and yes, the Russian trench fires 100 rounds per minute slower, it also hits for 39 more max damage and 19 more minimum damage, so there's far more of a reward to use in the Russian trench if you're good with it. For example, you can body shot someone and then switch to your pistol and quickly finish them off. With the Pieper, that's not particularly viable. Personally, I also find it tough to use the iron sights on the Pieper, and currently there isn't an alternative sight to switch to, unlike on most weapons. This of course won't be the case for everyone, but for me it certainly is. You may have noticed in some of the footage that I just can't seem to get or stay on target sometimes, something I tend to struggle with when I can't see clearly through the sights. Granted, I do have a terrible terrible internet connection currently, but I can still tell that I'm not as comfortable with this weapon as I am with most other ones. The Pieper is nice and stable though, due to the great horizontal recoil stats. That really is its main selling point. Either spam the trigger at close range or pace your shots at longer ranges and you're likely to shoot nice and straight. And on the whole, the Pieper does provide the opportunity to switch out to something completely different from an LMG if it just isn't working for you in a certain situation, but you still want or need to use the support class. That's about as much as I can say positively about it, to be honest. I felt like I was near constantly at a disadvantage using it. However, I'm pleased to see more options available, of course. It helps to keep the game fresh, and variety never hurt anyway. I'm just not very excited about the Pieper itself, if I'm honest with you. But that's my opinion. What's yours? Are you excited about the Pieper, or is there another new weapon or variant catching your eye? Let me know in the comments below. Now let's go over to the Board of Awesome for the epic people who allow you to get content from me full-time by supporting the channel on Patreon. They are the main reason you're watching this video right now. So thanks to everyone on here. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you don't want to miss future videos, including the other new weapons and variant reviews, turn on notifications with the bell button and select to always be notified with the options tab that should then pop up, and then feel free to like, share and subscribe. I'm GetGoodGuy and I'll see you next time. Laters.